Welcome to the Build Space. I'm Holly Lubart. Today I'm joined by Wendy Tippetts, principal of Tippetts Weaver Architects based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining us today, Wendy.
Thank you, Holly. I was surprised to get your email, so I'm honored to be involved with your program.
Wendy, you are a woman principal at Tippetts Weaver. Can you just tell me a little bit about your firm?
Well, our firm has been around for nearly 30 years. I think it's 28 years this year. And we have 8 people practicing here. And we do a variety of work, so it's pretty much the whole gamut. We don't do public building work, so we don't do DGS work in public schools, but everything else we are qualified to handle. And we really enjoy the variety in our work because it keeps us alive and keeps us learning.
Downtown Lancaster is a very vibrant and revitalized city. Has your firm been involved in that at all?
Well, we've been extremely active, and we've also invested in that. So my partner and I own a number of properties downtown, and the ones we're sitting in right now, right next to the library between Square One Coffee House, are we renovated, and we actually got historic tax credits for the project. 30 years ago when we started our firm, or nearly 30 years ago, Lancaster was pretty depressed, and so we've been very much involved in the revitalization of the city and have taken some risks financially to help make that improvement.
What do you believe are some of the architectural gems in the city of Lancaster?
Gosh, there are so many, and I would say well, the C. Emlyn urban buildings, of course, are always cited as some of the most interesting and more thoughtful design buildings from back in the early 1900s. He was a prolific architect, so he did the old Wat and Shan building, which now has been, at least the exterior of it has been restored, and it now serves as our convention center. So that would be one. I like the more humble buildings, so I like the infill of the city. Just the overall context of that's created around what we would call the special buildings or the focal points of the city. So I think that they're equally and perhaps more important than what people would consider the architectural gems.
The field of architecture has been more of a male-dominated field. So can you tell me what your experience has been like as a woman principal?
You know, I get asked this a lot. I feel that I'm welcomed and respected by most people, both in the construction field, other architects, engineers. When I went to college or graduate school, we were 50-50 in the Department of Architecture at the University of Oregon. So I've never really felt like an outsider. There's been very rare instances, and I can think of maybe 3 offhand, where perhaps a younger gentleman who's new in the construction trades has been not terribly respectful, but aside from that, no, I think everyone's been very supportive. I don't know if you want to, I think there may be a regional, for some reason, as we move further from the East Coast, from Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Baltimore, Washington region, there's fewer women in the field of architecture, and I don't know why that is, but it seems as you head towards the center of the country, there's fewer of us. So.
What made you want to become an architect?
It started at a young age. My mother's an artist, so she builds constructions, and she's a minimalist artist. So they're these huge white constructions that are play with light, shadow, and texture. So I was always very intrigued by her work. And then she started to, whenever she would travel or go to museums, she would bring back postcards. And so I started to assemble small books with they were spiral ring binders of these postcards. And included in those were a lot of architects' work, because they were sort of modernist pieces. I was thinking of the Guggenheim as being very much like my mother's work. And then as I went through school, I was always told, because I loved art, I was always in the art studio in my free time instead of out in the field playing sports. And along with math, I did very well in geometry, that I should be an architect. I should be an architect, that my skills matched that profession. And then I went off to, I couldn't commit to anything when I went to college, so I went off to college and picked a liberal arts school and found that I really enjoyed almost everything, from anthropology to geology to psychology to government. And then I started to hone in on architecture, and I think the thing about architecture is it can encompass all of those things. Because it's the different types of people you're working on, the different building types you're working on, and then you can focus in different areas. So I find that general education that I ended up having being very applicable to the practice of architecture.
Wendy, what do you think is important for the public to understand about architecture?
Now, Holly, this is the toughest question you've asked me, because I think there's so many directions I could take on this one. I think it's a grossly misunderstood profession. People confuse architects with builders, with designers, with interior designers, with engineers. So I think that it's a profession that needs to be, we need to bring greater clarification to it. And when we start with, of course, design. What our ability to think three-dimensionally and look at overall context from the from the whole environment, the economic context, the program, how the client's going to use the building, and sort of develop an overall vision for how our built environment is going to look, and sort of work back and forth between the context to the particular design problem that we're being asked to solve.
So would you say that architects are involved from the beginning to the end of every construction project?
We prefer to be. It's not always what happens in our projects. I think the most critical thing that we have to offer is that initial phase, which is called conceptual design or schematic design, to get projects off in the right direction in terms of design. Now, but I think there's huge value in us seeing through to the end. So carrying that initial concept through realization of construction and detailing, and that the project is properly constructed.
Any advice you would give to emerging professionals or future architects?
Architecture is so multifaceted, the profession. We can work on specifications, or we can work on concepts and design, those specifications being highly detailed and technical, and then design being more broad-minded and ideal-minded, I guess. I think that every individual, when they come to this office, I try to find out from them what they're interested in pursuing within the profession of architecture. And so really there's no pat over, correct answer, or one answer that I give to every student. It's really tailored to their personality and their needs, desires that they've expressed, and their skills.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Wendy, and thank you so much for watching The Built Space.